There's a lot of data out there, but we're missing the data that can settle an argument. Right, we're missing the data that you'd have a higher conviction on. And frankly, the government data, the other piece, it is so much more comprehensive. With the private sector or the surveys, you got to stitch together all these different data series, and they often go in different directions to tell a story. You don't have a long time series often, so it's really hard to think about, like the business cycle. So you just don't have the information that you would really want to kind of center a data-driven Fed. And so they'll make a decision, they will push forward, but it's, they really are missing what they need to have high conviction. So I think we will hear a lot of Fed speak and disagreement right down to the wire, because you can't point to the data that's usually there and say, hey, look, it's weakening or it's not weakening.
Claudia, I think probably one of the discussions the Fed is having is kind of, as I think about slowing job creation, is that more because there's just not a supply of workers due to lack of immigration and deportations and things like that, population aging? Or is it really a reduced demand for workers? Do we know anything about that labor market here?
Right. So this actually is the blind spot in terms of what we in the data landscape right now, the unemployment rate, right? Are we creating enough jobs to meet the workers who are out there looking for jobs, right? Because both of those can be moving around. And that's what we said. It looks like, job creation is slowed. Some of that's, less immigration, aging workforce. So there's not as much demand to have these jobs. And then also, firms just aren't, maybe they're slowing down in terms of their hiring. They don't want as many workers. So the unemployment rate has been a way to kind of bring that together and kind of ask ourselves, how worried about this should we be? Right? If jobs are slowing, but there aren't as many workers, well, that's not a big problem. That is the piece of data we are missing today. Since 1948, the federal government has collected information on unemployment directly from people until October of 2025. Like, that didn't happen. So that piece and this, the unemployment rate, that mismatch, like that is really a blind spot for the Fed. And it's really important in the way they think about kind of evening out the economy.
How the Fed can change the K-shaped economy. Dr. Claudia Sahm, this in Bloomberg Opinion here in the recent hours. Claudia, I look at this, and it goes back to Alan Meltzer, Carnegie Mellon, and, name anybody else you want as well. Since 1947, we've aggregated our economic data. Clearly, we don't have an aggregated American economy. In your essay, how does Jerome Powell surgically deal with the productivity bomb of AI and the rest of America flat on their back? What's the process or method for Powell to do that?
Right. I mean, the reality is the Fed can't do much about it. Right. It is a feature and a bug of monetary policy. They've got one tool. It's a very blunt one in terms of interest rates. And, not surprisingly, who's most sensitive to those interest rates? It's going to be the more financially constrained households or businesses. So the, low income, low wealth households, when interest rates go up, they're the ones that have to cut back because they don't have a way to kind of, other income to pull in, other wealth to pull in to deal with those extra costs. So monetary policy working, that's the bottom arm of the K, right? That's where we should see. And that's why I think, you can look at, when we have these discussions, okay, and it's not, the Fed is not the only factor pulling down at the bottom, but like that is monetary policy working. The Fed is still restrictive. Now, there's a lot pushing in the other direction, and say with AI, which has been, primarily up to this point, not financed by debt. So the interest rate really isn't as, pressing for that. So the Fed would have a very difficult time if they wanted to, and I don't think they do, but if, pushing against that.